We're going to talk about Rebekah Jones, former state data scientist in Florida. Now, there's a lot of stuff to go in this case, and this stuff is still ongoing. So please, 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 fact check me. And if the situation changes after this video is done, this is being recorded as of the 9th of December in 2020. So if the material conditions around this change, then please make sure that there is an update there. I am going with what I have available to me right now. As for am I hungry? I am not hungry right now. I got food before setting up this recording. Responding to the chat, which I shouldn't be doing right now. But this is Rebekah Jones. A Florida law enforcement agents searched the home of former state data scientist Rebekah Jones on Monday, entering her house with weapons drawn as they carried out a warrant as part of an investigation into an unauthorized message that was sent on a state communication system. At 8:30 this morning, state police came into my house to call my hardware and tech. They were serving a warrant on my computer after the DOH filed a complaint. The Florida Department of Health is the agency that fired Jones in May after she helped create the state's COVID-19 dashboard. Now, what was going on here? Well, Jones said that she lost her job after she refused to manipulate data to suggest that Florida was ready to ease COVID restrictions. A spokesperson for Florida Governor Ron Desantis said at the time that she exhibited a repeated course of insubordination during her time with the department. Now, why is the Florida governor responding on this? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. There's a coronavirus dashboard that was created by this person afterwards, not by the governor, but by her. And it looks a lot like the state health departments with a few key differences. It shows just how contentious coronavirus data has become and politicized that COVID data has become. So basically, if we were to look at Desantis, which we will be going into later on in the video, but Desantis is a Trump supporter, all right? I'm poisoning that well right now, but I'm not going to be doing a guilt by association fallacy here. I'm just pointing out that because there are some material realities that come out as a result of that. Let's go ahead and look at what Trump has done over the last year where COVID is concerned. He has argued that people don't need masks, or at least he's made it a point to be publicly shown as the strong Republican president without a mask on repeatedly. This guy has argued that early lockdown issues should not have been put out by anyone. No lockdown should have happened, and well, just in general, he hasn't done a whole lot to try to point out that we need small businesses to be able to actually function, which is going to be another video I'm going to do, and another thing I'm going to get into in this video specifically. Or at least during this stream. So, what has happened with Rebekah? Well, of course, her technology was seized, and we actually have a video of that happening here. So we'll take a look at that.
Come outside. Outside.
Who else is in the house, ma'am?
My 2 children and my husband.
Where's your husband at?
Calm down. Calm down.
You want the children down?
Call them all down.
Mr. Jones, come down the stairs. Now!
Why are you drawing your weapon? Why was a weapon needed to be drawn? Why are you aiming your weapon up there?
Bring your
Come down the
children.
stairs.
Why are you aiming your weapon up there?
He just pointed a gun at my children!
Why?
Search warrant.
Okay, so, while this is not necessarily a raid, per se, this is a served warrant, this is an infiltration of a house, to get her computer. Now, why is that? Well, because there was a group messaging board that Rebekah was part of that she was not technically authorized to be part of after she had been fired. And through that board, she actually submitted something saying that the other people who were working in the health administration that she was in should not take what Governor DeSantis is doing lightly. They should be heroes. But let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the article from NPR and then go into some of the other information surrounding this. It's not clear from the video whether agents pointed a gun at Jones's family members. The top of the stairs are not in view. It doesn't fucking matter, though, because literally, if a guy or a child would have come to the top of the stairs, the gun would have already been pointed there. That it doesn't matter if they were in... It doesn't matter that it was not in view. It matters that a person could have gotten there. Period. Now, legally, it does kind of matter, but I'm not worried about that specifically here right now. Florida Department of Law Enforcement Commissioner Rick Dennis says that at no time were weapons pointed at anyone in the home, but again, they knew that people were upstairs and they pointed the weapons up there. If the only people in the house are children and the husband, and you're just serving a warrant, why would you even come in just brandishing the weapons? Why would you need to? What's the fucking point? Swearingen says that Jones initially refused to answer her door and hung up on agents who called her about a pending search. Well, of course, if you think that the governor is trying to silence you, then yeah, of course you would. Jones called the raid on her home an act of retaliation for her persistent criticisms of how Florida has handled the pandemic. She accused Desantis of focusing more on political concerns than stopping the coronavirus, which again is exactly what we have seen with President Donald Trump, or I guess lame duck Donald Trump at this point, but still. They took my phone and the computer I use every day to post the case numbers in Florida. They took evidence of corruption at the state level. They claimed that it was about a security breach. This was Desantis. He sent the Descapo. Now, technically, this is about a security breach, technically speaking, because she was not supposed to be posting in those group chats, and that apparently is a security breach at that point. That's a thing she was not supposed to be able to do after she left her employment. Well, not left, after she was fired from her employment. However, this is still alarming. The fact that there was at least one legitimate reason for confiscation does not mean that this is still not alarming. Regardless. The court affidavit says the rogue message was sent to a state planning group. Again, that group she was not supposed to be able to in there. All users share the same username and password. Investigators were able to trace the message to an IP address affiliated with Jones's Comcast account. It adds that anyone who's no longer part of the agency and involved in the planning group, they're no longer authorized to access a multi-user group, which is what I pointed out earlier. And it's said in the chat by Philippe that this seems like a scare tactic. Probably. But still be skeptical. There's more to this than just what the article's saying. This is still, at its very base level, a skeptic channel, so we are going to look into this further than what is just being shown on places like NPR. There is more to this than that. After being fired from her job as a geographic information system manager, Jones created her own dashboard, which we already showed earlier there. She's also involved in another project, the COVID Monitor, which focuses on coronavirus in schools. That matters as well. She says the raid and the seizure of her computer and other devices won't stop her from tracking the data. She urges state officials to focus on easing the pandemic's horrible effects on Florida's citizens. DeSantis needs to worry less about what I'm writing about and more about the people who are dying and sick in his state. And doing this will not stop me from reporting on the data. In fact, actually, all DeSantis has done here is turn this woman into a martyr. Now, let's go into the next bit here. The next bit. Now, she does have, this is her Twitter account. She is posting live updates over on her Twitter account. So I am actually going to go ahead and follow that right now so that I can get information on as this is happening. But one of the things that she has posted, one of the things that she is involved in with, is about the stuff going on with COVID in schools. Now, I know, even on places like CNN, which are usually a little more left-leaning in compared to places like Fox News, which of course means that doesn't say a whole lot. But even places like that, there are health officials coming on there and saying it's definitely safe to open up schools. Here's an article that Rebekah Jones has participated in creating. On Thanksgiving Day, our database tracking COVID cases in K through 12 showed that there had been nearly 250,000 student and staff cases across the United States since August 1st. That's more cases than in every United States state combined from January to April 1st of this year. In fact, there are more than 1 million children who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 in the United States alone. Yet, the research on cases in U.S. schools remains limited. Inaccurate, unproven claims have filled the data gap, aiming to assuage? I don't remember how to pronounce that. I am so sorry. Anxieties about reopening schools for in-person classes, with seemingly little regard to the potential impacts the virus will have on students, staff, and communities. With uncertainties about long-term effects of infection on an individual's health, the evidence of children being asymptomatic spreaders of the disease in pediatric cases recently, public pleas for closing schools have grown. Because, of course, what have we heard from the freaking mask holes for the last bit? We have been hearing things like, well, children don't get it. Well, no, they're asymptomatic spreaders. They get it. They just don't suffer from the same negative effects as everybody else in the same degree as everyone else, and then they spread it to our teachers, which of course means that we are basically, I'm going to be hyperbolic for a second here, sacrificing teachers onto a funeral pyre. But it makes sense when you think about it. Stuff a bunch of people into a confined space for 8 hours a day, and the likelihood of catching viruses increases. If you've been a parent and you have put children through school, then you know that they get sick decently often, but you probably got sick more often interacting with your child. Internationally, data indicates how quickly schools may become super spreaders. In Israel, for example, many schools are closed due to COVID-19 outbreaks only 2 weeks after the country fully reopened classrooms. Districts in Georgia and Mississippi experienced similar scenarios when they started school in August. A recent study from the UK in November also shows a decline in cases in every age group, apparently among school age and teens. The need for good ethical data and science on the issue of COVID-19 cases in American schools inspired our team to create the COVID Monitor, a joint effort between the finance-focused nonprofit FinMango and Florida COVID Action. We wanted to provide timely, transparent, and unbiased data about the impact of K-12 education on the spread of the virus and vice versa. Run entirely by a small army of volunteers, we've taken on the task that would be the responsibility of a federal agency under any other administration, because again, of course, this is still Trump's America, and that leads to its issues. Now, if you want to read the rest of the article, you can. Again, it is posted as one of the main items on Rebekah's page here. It is a pinned tweet. But let's look at some of the fallout that has happened as a result of this. Ron Filipkowski has resigned and is no longer part of the government of Florida in any capacity right now. He posted his letter of resignation to Governor Desantis. Now, why is that? He resigns his position as the commissioner and vice chair for the 12th Circuit Judicial Nominating Commission. It's been his honor to serve on the commission for over 10 years. In that time, they reshaped the judiciary in the system, or in the circuit, with highly qualified, intelligent jurists of the highest integrity. He's proud to have been part of that. He's been increasingly alarmed by the governor's response to COVID-19. He believes the policy of this state towards COVID is reckless and irresponsible. He remained in his position because health policy was unrelated to his job. However, recent events regarding public access to truthful data on the pandemic and the specific treatment of Rebekah Jones has made this issue now a legal run rather than just medical. He's followed the events of Mrs. Jones, seen the quality of her replacement, because of course when they fired her from her position they put somebody else there, and reviewed the search warrant that led to her home being raided by multiple armed officers. Based on what he has seen and read, he finds these actions completely unconscionable, and even if the facts alleged are true, I would still call her a hero. Again, what did I point out earlier in the stream? If you're watching this afterwards, earlier in the video, even though there was at least a justified reason for the search warrant, this is still an alarming thing regardless because of the other things attached to this. He finds Mr. Piccolo's statements that the governor was unaware of the raid not credible because, well, the fact that the governor would not know about this, and then the fact that he's commented on this going forward, I wouldn't find that credible either. This is like Trump whenever he goes, I don't know about that, but I think I might have somebody who knows about that. I can ask them later about that. Bullshit. You're in the highest office. You know. Please take action to fill his vacancy in the JNC as soon as practicable. He no longer wishes to serve the current government of Florida in any capacity, and honestly, who can blame him? Now, I don't know a whole lot about this character, about Ron. I don't know a whole lot about him. Apparently, he is a Republican, but he is one of the Republicans for Biden. I mean, if his name here is any, if his Twitter handle is any indication, this is a Republican who is not a fan of the current administration in any way, shape, or form. But now we need to talk about the governor, because, of course, Governor DeSantis is at the epicenter of all this. And honestly, he might be a little more interesting than everything else. So let's take a look at Governor DeSantis. Let's take a look at some of his policies real quick. And we are going to be using Wikipedia for brevity's sake, so please, as per with everything, check afterwards. On healthcare, DeSantis is opposed to the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. He's called for a full and complete repeal of the act, which would of course mean that there are 20 million residents in the United States who would lose healthcare coverage. But continuing. In March of 2017, DeSantis said that he wasn't ready to support the American Health Care Act, the House Republican effort to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. He did vote for the Republican effort to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. So, it seems like we just have a guy that hates healthcare. Truly and honestly. And let's see what he has done as far as the COVID-19 pandemic is concerned. His handling of the pandemic has been harshly criticized. According to Sun Sentinel, DeSantis, who owes his job to early support from President Donald Trump, imposed an approach in line with the views of the president and his powerful base of supporters. The administration suppressed unfavorable acts, dispensed dangerous misinformation, and dismissed public health professionals, and promoted the views of scientific dissenters who supported the governor's approach to the disease. Now, of course, this is from Secrecy and Spin, from the Sun Sentinel. If you would like to see what has gone on with that article, then please go check that one out so that you can get a full picture on here. Again, we're using Wikipedia for brevity's sake. According to public health experts, politics dictated the response to the coronavirus in Florida rather than science. This one is from Coronavirus Ravaged Florida, as Ron DeSantis sidelined scientists and followed Trump from the WAPO. DeSantis rejected implementation of a statewide face mask mandate, belatedly implemented stay-at-home orders, and let his stay-at-home order implements in April expire. In July of 2020, as Florida had become a global epicenter of the virus, with nearly 5,800 deaths, DeSantis had largely sidelined health experts and scientists. The Washington Post reported that DeSantis primarily relied on his wife, a former television reporter and his chief of staff, a former hospital executive. A hospital executive and your wife are not the experts you need to be looking for. You need to be looking at epidemiologists. You need to be looking at virologists. You need to be looking at people who are actually experts in tallying data. You do not need to be looking at business executives, especially people in the business of healthcare. And you need to be looking at people who are not your fucking wife for this. But early in the pandemic, he boasted about how low the number of COVID cases in Florida were and harshly criticized those who argued that his state's lax response was insufficient. Experts argued that the delays in lockdown would greatly increase Florida's coronavirus numbers and leave it susceptible to becoming a new hotspot, which, well, on March 8th, the CDC privately briefed DeSantis that Florida was already experiencing community spread of COVID-19. But the next day, DeSantis publicly denied that Florida was experiencing community spread of COVID-19. Even after being told by the virologists, the epidemiologists, and the people set to tally data that you're fucking wrong. On March 10th, the federal official, Dr. Anthony Fauci, publicly confirmed that Florida had community spread, while DeSantis only confirmed the spread on March 14th. This dude does nothing but follow. By the end of March 2020, Florida had a bunch more cases. DeSantis declared that he would not issue a statewide stay-at-home order because the Trump administration had not recommended that he do so. I would say if the boot fits, but when it comes to this guy and Trump, I think the better terminology would be if the boot licks. On April 1st, he ordered that all Floridians stay home for 30 days, with exceptions for essential services and activities. Desantis received criticism for falsely stating on April 9th that no fatalities under 25 had been caused in the United States by COVID-19. He acknowledged his error after critics pointed it out and clarified that there had been no deaths from the coronavirus in people under 25 in Florida, which is a goalpost move. In early June, he partially lifted his stay-at-home order, lifting restrictions on bars and cinemas. On the same day that he lifted restrictions, Florida recorded the largest coronavirus case surge in 6 weeks. Of course it did. We also have other political positions of his. I'm not going to stick with just COVID. We also have his positions on LGBT rights. He gets a 0 rating from the Human Rights Campaign based on his record of voting on LGBTQ-related issues and legislation, which we could even look at that real quick. We could look at that real quick and see why. After citing mass shootings at a gay nightclub in Florida, the Pulse Knights shooting, to seek re-election, Mark Rubio has earned the lowest rating possible. Well, that's Mark Rubio. That's not who we're looking at right now. That's not who we're looking at. We are looking at Desantis. Desantis, why is it saying Mark Rubio? That's a weird one. Hold on. Is my Control F not working? Okay. 1 of 1. Desantis has a 0 score. Of course. Now, what was the actual cited reason why here, though? Let's take a look. In 2018, he told Sun Sentinel that he doesn't want any discrimination in Florida. He wants people to be able to live their lives, whether you're gay or whether you're religious. That's kind of a yikesy way of wording that. That almost otherizes people who are gay from not being religious and assumes that everybody who's religious must be straight. In 2019, less than a week after taking office, Desantis issued a non-discrimination order for state employees, reiterating former Governor Scott's order. The order included race, age, sex, color, religion, national origin, marital status, and disability, but it, of course, included no protections for sexual orientation or gender identity. Because those must not be the real issues. That's like doing the whole all men are created equal, but then conveniently forgetting that black people are human beings. That thing that our founding fathers did, that's a little close to that. Basically, do your own research on this as well. Please, go back behind me. Do checks on this. But the dude's got some issues. He's got issues where immigration is concerned, issues where LGBT rights are concerned, and he's got issues where COVID is concerned and healthcare concerned. From what I can tell, I do not favor this person. And of course, there are news reports that have been coming out in regards to him as well, saying that apparently, and I don't have all the information on this one yet, but apparently he's also been holding MAGA rallies around where he is. That was just one of the news things that popped up as I was doing research on him. So I'm uncertain as to everything going on with him, but I'm not a fan of what I've seen thus far. So dialing everything back to Rebekah, dialing everything back to where we started here. This is alarming. This is an alarming thing to deal with, because in an ideal world, politics would be very far divorced from our sciences. But we don't live in that ideal world. We don't. And so right now we're having to deal with the material reality where whistleblowers can have their houses searched by the police and have all their technology confiscated. Which is not a great world to live in. That's not a great world to live in at all.